Al Jazeera submits Shireen Abu Akleh's murder case to International Criminal Court. Georgia voters have final say on 2022 midterm battles. Celebrating North Carolina's first mosque and Durham's Muslim community. Babri Masjid's demolition remembered as worst day for Indian democracy. Destroyed copy of the Quran left near entrance to a mosque in Sweden. Rising threat of hate speech, extremism, discussed at Global Summit in Istanbul. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight. Al Jazeera has formally asked the International Criminal Court to investigate and prosecute the killers of Shireen Abu Akleh. Abu Akleh was a Palestinian-American TV reporter who had worked with Al Jazeera for 25 years before Israeli forces killed her on May 11th. She became a household name across the Arab world for her bold coverage of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. She was killed while wearing a clearly marked jacket that showed that she was a member of the press. Abu Akleh was covering an Israeli military raid on a refugee camp in Jenin in occupied Palestine when she was killed. The U.S. Justice Department opened an investigation into Abu Akleh's death last month. In their own investigations, the New York Times, the Associated Press, CNN, and the Washington Post concluded that the Israeli military killed Abu Akleh. Today, in breaking news, a jury in the state of New York found the Trump Organization guilty in a 15-year tax fraud scheme to pay top executives off the books and have them avoid paying taxes. Guilty verdicts were returned on 17 counts, including conspiracy, scheme to defraud, criminal tax fraud, and falsifying business records. The company also faces $1.7 million in fines during sentencing. The Trump Organization and longtime Chief Financial Officer Ellen Weisselberg was indicted last year by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office after a multi-year investigation into the financial practices of former U.S. President Donald Trump's company. Weisselberg, who pleaded guilty in August to charges that he avoided paying nearly $2 million in taxes on company-provided perks, testified against the Trump Organization as part of a plea deal. Trump, who was not charged in the case, lashed out on social media Tuesday, saying the district attorney's office has been fighting a political witch hunt for D.C. against Trump. The last act of the 2022 midterm elections played out today in Georgia in the United States. More than 1.8 million Georgians have cast their ballot before today's runoff election. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker, a former NFL football player, are on the ballot. The runoff election was needed because neither candidate won more than 50% of the votes cast in the November 8th midterms to be elected. Polls close at 7 p.m. with day-long lines. Democrats currently control the U.S. Senate, but another seat would give them more leverage. The city of Minneapolis will compensate people injured during protests related to the killings of George Floyd with a $50,000 award each. ACLU Minnesota last Wednesday reached a settlement with the city over police mistreatment of civilians during the protests against racism and police brutality in 2020. The settlement includes a $600,000 payment and numerous reforms. The 12 plaintiffs suffered injuries, including bruising from less than lethal munitions, lingering respiratory issues from tear gas, and psychological trauma. As part of the settlement, Minneapolis must also reform how police handles demonstrations. Body camera worn by the Minneapolis law enforcement officers must be recording and unobstructed when they engage with protesters. The city may not arrest, threaten to arrest, or use physical force like chemical agents, flashbang grenades, and foam-tipped bullets against protesters. An Oklahoma corrections officer has been found guilty of using white supremacist gangs as its own personal hit squad, targeting black inmates. The Justice Department said Matthew Ware of the Kay County Detention Center has been sentenced to 46 months in prison. Court documents revealed Ware used lower-ranking correctional officers to restrain pre-trial detainees. They were laid in a stretched-out position like a medieval rack in retaliation for critiquing how Ware ran the prison. The person was left in that position for 90 minutes, resulting in physical injuries. Ware is being held accountable for abusing his position of power and authority, said the DOJ. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Civil Rights Division said Ware facilitated an attack carried out by white supremacists on a black inmate. It is unclear whether Ware will serve his sentence at the prison where he worked. North Carolina's first known mosque was established in Durham nearly 65 years ago. A new exhibit honors the rich living history of African American Muslims in the city. The transformational history of Al-Razak Islamic Center in Durham is on display through December 12th at the city's Duke University's Parkins Library. The exhibit explores 5 facets of thriving Muslim life in Durham: culture, business, education, civic engagement, and health. It includes a selection of artifacts, photographs, and videos. Visitors can partake in a historical journey to gain an understanding of Muslims' extensive contributions to the community and country. Mona Hassan, Associate Professor of Religious Studies, History, and International and Comparative Studies at Duke, curated the exhibit. She hopes visitors will realize how deeply rooted Islam is in the Carolinas, extending centuries before the founding of the Durham Mosque. On Monday, Pakistan said Russia has decided to export crude oil, gasoline, and diesel to the South Asian nation at discounted prices. Musaddiq Malik, Pakistan's Deputy Minister for Petroleum, shared the details after meeting with his Russian counterparts in Moscow last week. Malik said an intergovernmental delegation led by the Russian Energy Ministry will visit Pakistan next month. He expects to firm up the details after both sides sign the agreement. Malik did not share specifics about the discount offered by Moscow or how soon Islamabad will be able to import Russian petroleum products. Neighboring India has also been receiving discounted oil from Russia. The U.S. Navy says it has seized a fishing trawler smuggling ammunition from Iran to war-torn Yemen. The Bahrain-based U.S. Fifth Fleet said the boat was intercepted in the Gulf of Aden on December the 1st. It was carrying more than 50 tons of ammunition rounds, fuses, and propellants for rockets, the fleet said. Vice Admiral Brad Cooper said it clearly shows that Iran's unlawful transfer of lethal aid and destabilizing behavior continues. Last month, the U.S. Navy said it thwarted the smuggling of a huge shipment of fuel for rockets in the Gulf of Oman. The shipment was apparently on its way to Iran-aligned Houthi rebels in Yemen, according to the Navy. Iranian authorities did not comment on the U.S.'s accusations. The U.S. and Saudi-led military coalition in Yemen accuse Iran of supplying weapons to Houthi rebels. Tehran has denied this accusation. Yemen's civil war between Iran-backed Houthi rebels and a Saudi-led military coalition began in September 2014 and has created one of the world's worst humanitarian crises in the world. rising threats of hate speech, extremism, discussed at Global Summit in Istanbul. After the break, stay tuned as we will be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. On Saturday, panelists at the International Strategic Communications Summit in Istanbul discussed how to fight the rising threat of extremism and hate speech. Jonathan Fowler, a UN Regional Communications Officer, said the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations is a critical platform for this purpose. The alliance was formed in 2005 as a political initiative of then UN Chief Kofi Annan. It was co-sponsored by Turkey and Spain. Fowler said that the alliance was established to explore the roots of polarization and how hate speech was actually accentuating that polarization. He said misinformation and disinformation have spurred the UN's decision to declare June 18th as International Day for Countering Hate Speech. Fadi Farasin is Assistant Director General of the Statistical, Economic, and Social Research and Training Center for Islamic Countries at the Organization of Islamic Conference. He said combating extremism and Islamophobia is part of the group's 2025 action plan. An Israeli court on Sunday rejected a petition to release Nail al-Barghouti, a local NGO reports. He's the longest-serving Palestinian detainee in Israeli jails. The Palestinian Prison Society said that the military court decided to uphold al-Barghouti's life sentence, citing a secret file against him. The 65-year-old has been in prison for 43 years. In 2011, he was released under a prisoner swap deal between Hamas and Israel. In 2014, however, he was rearrested and his sentence was reinstated. His defense lawyer filed a petition with the Israeli High Court 4 years ago demanding that he be released based on the terms of the prisoner swap deal. The deal states that Israel cannot rearrest freed prisoners and reinstate their sentence. According to Palestinian authorities' estimates, 47 freed detainees were rearrested and their sentences were reinstated. On Friday, a destroyed copy of the Quran was left near the entrance to a mosque in Stockholm in an Islamophobic attack. Images shared by the Stockholm Mosque showed the damaged scripture chained up and hanging from an iron railing outside the mosque. Mosque officials said the congregation frequently receives threats. The mosque has been subjected to Islamophobic attacks before, such as anti-Islamic graffiti and writings painted on its door. On December 6, 1992, Hindu extremists demolished the 16th century Babri Mosque in the northern Indian city of Ayodhya. It became a major step for the RSS and Bharatiya Janata Party's rise to power, promoting its Hindutva ideology. Today marks the 30th anniversary of the historic Masjid's demolition. India's Muslim leaders on Tuesday said December 6 will forever remain a dark day for Indian democracy. Asaduddin Owaisi tweeted, "Those responsible for its destruction were never convicted." Owaisi is president of the All India Majlis-e-Ittihadul Muslimin. RSS BJP activists are now calling for the takeover of 3,000 other mosques, according to media reports. A special segment on the 30th anniversary of Babri Masjid's demolition is coming up later tonight, so keep watching Muslim News. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law banning propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations, gender reassignment, and pedophilia. That's according to a corresponding entry made in the Russian lower parliament database on Sunday, Russian TASS news agency reports. Under the new law, such propaganda is now completely prohibited on social networks, in mass media, films, and advertisements. It criminalizes promotion of non-traditional sexual relations as Moscow pushes for conservative values. A separate provision bans the dissemination of such information among minors. Until now, the ban only applied to material about LGBT. There are plans to deny access to LGBT-related information on paid sites for minors. Special codes or other actions will be necessary to enter such websites. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment on the Babri Masjid. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. To discuss the 30th anniversary of Babri Masjid's demolition, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. In India, mosques and churches are at risk. Risk of destructions. One of the mosques, which was built about 500 years ago, known as Babri Mosque, was demolished 30 years ago. And that was connected with the event which led to Indian Prime Minister Modi being banned from entering America and as well as Canada and UK. And those type of efforts, the mobilization against that mosque, demolition at that mosque, and rebuilding that mosque as a temple, has been an instrument in bringing to power the BJP RSS regime. Today, December 6th, is the 30th anniversary of that particular event. By now, they are targeting other mosques as well. To discuss this, we have with us Zahir Adil. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Network.
Walaikum salam, Iman. Thank you for having me.
Zahir Adil leads Save India from Fascism campaign of justice for all, based in Boston. Thank you for your time. So, who demolished Babri Mosque and why?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. I like to think of it as the majoritarian regime that's in India and their supporters having destroyed the mosque. So it was just not the mob that was there breaking down the mosque that happened 30 years ago, but behind it were the supporters that allowed them to do this. And all of these supporters are today aligned with Modi's government and with the party and with the ideology and the group that is behind the party, which is called the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, which happens to be the largest paramilitary organization in the world. So it's no surprise. It should not come as a surprise to us that these are the people that took it upon themselves to use the destruction of that mosque and to create the base that they have created today in India.
Those who demolished the mosque, were they arrested? Were they tried? Were they punished?
Well, they were arrested after a while, but however, now we find that all of the ones against whom charges were brought were actually exonerated. So this happened just about, I'm not remembering the date, but just a couple of years ago, that every single person that was charged in the destruction of the mosque, which the judiciary in India has agreed was illegal, but all of them were exonerated, all of them were let go.
The Indian Supreme Court has allowed a Hindu temple to be built in the location of that 500-year-old mosque. Did Supreme Court actually say that there is a proof that it used to be a temple?
No, and that's the strange part about this. The judgment that was made was apparently written by the current Chief Justice of India. And in the judgment, they actually did say that when idols were installed in the mosque, as well as the destruction of the mosque itself was illegal, they gave the area to those very people. The other thing that they say is that there is no clear indication that there ever was a temple in that location. And however, the judgment was based upon the faith of these people who had petitioned the court about this mythological god Rama having been born in the place. So no, to answer your question, there was no clear indication.
So Supreme Court in its verdict said that there is no historic evidence that it was ever a temple.
That's correct.
So why, on what basis then they gave it to those people, Hindu extremists, to build a temple there?
In the court opinion that was written, they did allude to the faith of the people who had petitioned the court for this, and the faith being that they sincerely believed that the god Rama was born in the very spot that the mosque stood. So, unfortunately, this is a judgment that is very, very strange. It's not based on evidence, it is more based on faith, in my opinion. And this is actually the opinion that is written by Justice Chandrachud.
Now, has Indian Supreme Court been hostile to Muslims? Because in 1994, they gave a decision that mosque is not an essential part of Islam. Did that play a role in the thinking it is okay to give a mosque to a Hindu temple, which is, despite it being historic mosque?
I believe it might have been. There have been a series of things that have happened in India. Each simple little decision made by the court, which might seem not very significant at that time, but it adds to the whole. And what these right wingers and extremists do is to build upon those little things and then to create something big out of it. So the decision by, well, at least the opinion, I should say, by the court, saying that the mosque is not an essential part of Islam, certainly must have played a role that encouraged these mobs to go out and destroy the Babri Masjid. Beyond that, actually, there have been several other opinions made by the court, which again seek to diminish the Muslim experience in India.
So Hindu extremists of RSS, which is a paramilitary organization in India, and current Prime Minister is a member of that, and they are the people also who are who's one of whose member murdered Gandhi. Do you think by demolition of the mosque, those people not being punished, and the court allowing extremists to build a temple on that location, will encourage the same RSS extremists to claim other mosques and demolish other mosques?
Oh, that's absolutely happening even today. So the mosque that is probably most in danger at this time in India is one that's called the Gyanvapi Mosque. And so that is another mosque that is being targeted by these extremists. And yet another mosque in the city of Mathura is being targeted. And they have a list of different mosques that they want to go after. In each case, it's very similar. The mechanism that they use is to claim that they found some artifact that points to it having been a place of Hindu worship in the past and now needs to be converted. So you're absolutely right. It is encouraging attacks on other mosques, and we need to be very, very cognizant about this fact.
If they say that they found some artifact in a mosque, what type of artifacts they are talking about as evidence? Is it the same thing like Babri Mosque? They place a idol in there and say, "Hey, this idol is historic."
No, in the Babri Mosque case, it was very, very direct. They actually placed the idols in the mosque itself. In the case of the Gyanvapi Mosque, as you know, every mosque, whether it is in India or in other places of the world, they have a place where people use to wash themselves, to do ablutions before the prayer. And so in some of these mosques, what they are claiming is that the structure of the fountains that are built for these ablution areas, these are actually an object of Hindu worship. That object of Hindu worship is called Shivling, which is, I'm not going to explain the exact meaning of it. However, Hindus worship the Shivling, and so any structure that has sort of an oval to it can be considered a Shivling. And in the Gyanvapi Mosque, that is precisely what they are saying, that the fountain, which had a structure which had sort of a oval dome to it, that was a Shivling, and because it resembles a Shivling, it might have been there before. And if it was there before, the mosque itself has been built on a place of Hindu worship. It's a long stretch of the imagination, but that's what they do.
So are the only mosques being targeted, or some churches are also being targeted by these Hindu extremists?
Churches are also being targeted. So we've seen churches being targeted as well as mosques, and churches have been desecrated. Mobs have entered the churches. They've beaten up pastors. And we were just having a conversation before this with Father Cedric Prakash from India, and he was pointing out this fact. And he was saying that, Muslims need to stand with the Christians and the Christians need to stand with the Muslims, because they are both seeing the same sort of attacks happening against their worship places.
There were reports that to rebuild, instead of Babri Mosque, a Hindu temple, money and bricks were purchased from American Hindus and sent over there. Recently, a flyer emerged that some 501c3 not-for-profit organization in Texas is raising money, and flyer clearly states it is to demolish illegal quote-unquote churches in India. Was there money being raised here to demolish mosque also, or is it just churches being demolished through money in the USA?
Well, the one particular instance that you're referring to now is an organization called the Global Hindu Heritage Foundation, which is based out of Texas. They very openly said in their fundraiser that the funds that they are going to be raising will be used for two things. One, destruction of churches, and the second one that they had talked about in there was Ghar Wapsi, which is reconversion of Christians and Hindus back into Hinduism. The Christians and Muslims back into Hinduism. But even though they did not say that they are raising any funds for the destruction of mosques, I'm sure that there are many, many other organizations. So the GHHF, the Global Hindu Heritage Foundation, happens to be only one such organization in the United States that's aligned with the RSS. There are many, many others, the Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, all of which try to push the Modi agenda in the United States. And I'm sure that whatever they are saying, they're raising funds for, some of them may be misused and may go to mobs that are targeting these mosques and destroying them.
Well, thank you so much, Zahir Adil, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Back to you, Hena.
That was Zahir Adil from Justice for All, Save India from Fascism team. Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.